And welcome back to Devlog. In the last part, I made my way through the treacherous forest of Niflroth in search of its destined pond in the centre of this forest. I hoped to wade through its waters to receive my heartfelt wish. But the journey there was wrought with danger. After making my way through the spooky section, I came across a clearing in the forest. This path seemed safe, almost, except for the sighting of a spooky witch with a green big nose. She spoke in riddles, and she told me,
"If you want to pass through this area, you must answer my riddle."
Luckily, I brought my AR-15 with me, expecting such a danger. I was able to dispatch her quickly. And in this part I work on more of the visual design for my video game. Okay, so just up front on this video, I'm only making this one because I'm going to forget how I made my specific art style for this game in 3 months when I come to do more design work for the backgrounds, and I'm going to have to watch this video to remind myself how I even drew the things in this game to make it so that the art style is matching in future updates when I add more visual styles. So, hello future me, you big dumb idiot. Did you forget how to draw a barrel? Here's how I did it. But in this devlog, I'm going to go over how I went from designing a barrel in 3D, as in a 3-dimensional model, as you're currently viewing, into a 2-dimensional sprite in the game. It has a specific process of how I did this, and I'm just very happy with how it turned out, and I want to talk about it. So the first thing I did is model the base of whatever objects I want to in 3D. This is in Blender, and this is just to make sure the proportions of the model are correct. In this instance, I want it to be a fairly square encompassing barrel. This means it takes up 1 unit in game space, so it can just have the hitbox of a square, and doesn't need anything overly complicated for its shapeage. It's really just a barrel. There's nothing to write home about. This is mostly because I'm not very good at drawing in 2D, so having a 3-dimensional base for myself to base all of my images off is a whole lot easier. After this, I will just draw the texturing for this object. Once again, this is mostly a reference for myself in the future when I come to drawing this object in 3D, so I know what it looks like, what colors it should have. All I really do for this is I have some base colors that I work with, and I just draw in where things should roughly look. I'm going to be honest, even though I didn't use this, I do kind of like how the barrel turned out in this. It does have a very goofy, Toon-looking style. If I was to actually make the game in 3D or some other system, I may actually be happy with how the character barrel looks in this sense, but I wanted to do the stupid thing and make it 2-dimensional. So after I have this set up, all I do is render out an image, and then I go into Photoshop and I draw my barrel. Unfortunately, due to my haphazard nature of development, I didn't record myself drawing the barrel, because that would take too long. All I do is I take the 3-dimensional model reference and I draw over chunks of this model. As you can see on the screen, hopefully, I draw these in different sections so that they can be later disassembled for future animations. But for ease of drawing, I just draw the different sections. So the rings of the barrels are all separate layers, the wooden planks of the barrels are all separate layers, the top of the barrel is a separate layer, and I will explain why this is in a moment. But for now, it's mostly just so they look nice and are easy to draw. In terms of how I actually drew this, it is deceptively simple. All I do is I draw the base of what each of the colors should be. So I use the reference of the 3D model, and I just draw the base reference of these color schemes. So the metal ring with the highlights. I drew this very messily, and then I use a Photoshop filter called, oh, I sure should remember what they're all called Palette Knife, which gives the impression of this drawing being more of a painted style. So like the drawing has been done by a actual artist and not just some little me doodling with drawing tablets. This basically makes it so that the artistic way I draw things, of just being a bunch of blobby blocks that I add in a vague proximity of shape, actually look halfway artistic. So this is a really good tool if you're like me and not very good at drawing. Once I have all of these images arranged, I will then make a separate sprite for the model itself, and this is what we're using in-game. This means I don't have to constantly overlay a bunch of sprites in-game to make models. I can have one separate sprite for the constructed model and one separate sprite for the deconstructed model for when these objects break. Once I have this arranged, I can just arrange the sprites in-game. I use a specific kind of sprite rendering material, not the default Unity one, but the unlit transparent cutout, which just comes with most Unity things. This is because I'm lazy with sprite layering, and this means that I can just arrange these sprites in scene a whole lot easier than I usually would have to. And also so I can have the plane, for example, tilted and have it so the player can walk on the top of it, but if they were to walk on the underneath, the barrel would perhaps tilt and obscure the player. This is just for certain layering of stackable objects of the same object. There's no real actual reason to do this, and I'm pretty sure a smarter developer would do a different method, but I'm just awkward and like to do things my own way. Next, I will use the sprite sheet from earlier, this being all the model's separated parts for each of these destructible objects to create the destruction effect. This is when this object breaks. So when the player hits it and it explodes into a million pieces. All we do is we turn off the barrel sprite, we destroy that object, and we create a destruction effect. This is just a impression of the object breaking. So I just make a particle system for each of these objects using their sprite rendering, and then I will just have these fly apart, giving the impression the object has just smashed completely as the player hits it with their big old frying pan. This is really easy to do. Particle system, sprite rendering, blah blah blah. Just make the objects fly in a way that looks nice. I like this effect for objects breaking apart. I am a big fan of any game that has a destruction effect of an object breaking into a million pieces. It looks fun. I like it. Full stop. It's nice. It also means I can reuse the sprite sheet from earlier for each of these models. And that's about it for how I went from a 3D model to this very stylized drawn barrel. I really like how it turned out. I really like this art style for the player being more simple Toonish, but the backgrounds having a bit more detail in their designs. Drawing in this way is also really useful because I can easily swap out the models. For example, I can use the rims of the original barrel and I can just draw in a metal frame for them to make a completely different object very easily. All I have to do is just draw a different background for it, and hey, I have a metal barrel now. I wonder how this will implement gameplay. But this is just my workflow for making non-three-dimensional objects in-game. If I want to do a specific sort of sprite, I can just make it in 3D, as this is what I'm more familiar with, render it out, and then draw over it in 2D to add more detail and more of a two-dimensional look to the model. Hopefully this devlog has been interesting, fun, satisfying. Once again, I'm just really proud of this barrel. I like how it looks visually. Nice barrel. Just wanted to make a video all about it. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next devlog I make. I promise it will be a real one about actual game mechanics. I promise.